Hello, beautiful community. We are here for day 15 of 21 days of fear, where I am going live every day talking about fear and how it shows up in the collective to undermine our divine intelligence, to sabotage our dreams, and to keep us stuck in patterns of stress, anxiety, depression, and all the things that are wrapped up into those three words. So, welcome. Today we are talking about the dangers of the collective desensitization and normalization of fear. We are in a world right now that has normalized fear and has desensitized fear. And what this has created is a reality where it is normal to be on more antidepressants, antipsychotics, on more medications and prescriptions for mental dis-ease. It's just normal. It's, oh, you're on 10 different pills. That's totally normal. And for me, you know, there is one television show that I watch on Hulu. So I see the commercials. And a lot of times those commercials are pharmaceuticals. And if you've seen those commercials, it's like, here's what this is going to do. And then it goes into a list of all these terrible side effects. Yet people still get on those prescription pills. This is just one example of how we have become desensitized and have normalized fear, where we see all of these warnings: heart attack, death, no more menstruation, inability to have children, stroke, brain damage, right? All of these really extreme things that could happen from taking this pill for depression or for anxiety or for stress or for panic attacks or for disassociation. When people continue to take this, the reason that this is able to be broadcasted across television is because we've become normalized and desensitized to fear. And this has happened because fear is shoved down our throats. It's all over the television. The algorithms, even on Facebook, favor posts that are going to instill fear and trigger people to respond in outrage, because those posts generate more traffic. They keep people coming back to the Facebook, and the Facebook wants that to happen. So the algorithms favor fear-oriented posts. The news is all about fear, right? We're now in this time where fear has become so normalized that we don't even recognize all of the ways that it's showing up and creating diseases of the mind and of the body and of our ability to connect with each other and to connect to ourselves and connect to our truth and connect to spirit. So this topic today is really about the danger of this, right? Because we have normalized fear, it is now totally normal to be hopped up on all different types of drugs and medications, and it is totally normal to be depressed, to be suicidal. This is a dangerous reality when fear is the predominant way of relating to the world. And the desensitization that has happened as a result is like when someone talks about suicide or someone talks about their mental health challenges, it's not even like a second thought. It's just like, okay, well, go take some Prilosec or whatever other drug there is, because that'll just help you so that we don't have to talk about this, because like we're all kind of uncomfortable talking about suicide or depression or how many schools are being shot up regularly now, right? It's become normalized, this fear-oriented world, which allows us to get even deeper into our own in-process trauma. And the deeper we go down this rabbit hole of desensitizing fear and normalizing fear, the farther we are growing out of alignment with health and wholeness. We're going into even more dysfunctions, imbalances. This time of year right now, in the United States and in other parts of the world, we have, right, Halloween. We have this whole time of year that is dedicated and devoted to frightening, to fear, to, yeah, there are other parts of it where we can dress up and play and pretend to be these other people. That being said, it's haunted houses, it's spooktacular, it's fright fest, it's all of these things. It's horror movies, it's war movies, it's action movies, right? All of these things are showing that what happens when we normalize fear, mentally, we normalize depression, anxiety, stress, panic. Physically, we normalize sympathetic dominance. We normalize aggression. We normalize fight or flight. We normalize war. We normalize feeling so agitated in our bodies that we don't know what else to do other than to self-medicate. And when we normalize our sympathetic mode, we're locking ourselves into fight, flight, or freeze. And we go seeking then to give our sympathetic normalized society what it needs through either being an adrenaline junkie. When we're in that freeze mode, our sympathetic normalization is like, well, I need the adrenaline to give me feeling again. When we're in fight mode, we normalize war. We normalize violence. We normalize, television shows and movies that are dedicated to portraying the normalization of our fight sympathetic mode. And when we are in flee, right, run away, we normalize our disassociation from each other and we normalize our separation. We normalize growing apart. We normalize ending really beautiful connections with people. We normalize feeling isolated and alone, which feeling isolated and alone leads to and amplifies the depression, the anxiety, the fear, the abandonment, these core traumas. So being in this world where we have desensitized and normalized fear is incredibly dangerous. And we are now seeing the byproducts of that as we see the rise in depression. In 2020, depression is stated to be the #1 mental health disease that is keeping more people from their work, from their families, and from being able to live a healthy and happy life. So we have depression now top of the list. And then if we look at the 6 leading reasons for people dying in their bodies, all of the causes of those 6 leading issues is stress, which is the normalization of our fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic dominance in our body. So now we're seeing that the top causes of both mental and physical dis-ease and death are due, in fact, because our culture, our species has been programmed to normalize fear. This is incredibly dangerous because if we don't do something about this and take back the power and wake up to the truth that we're being intentionally fed this fear, because when we are in a normalization of fear, when we are taking in all the pharmaceutical drugs because it just helps us to cope with our depression or our anxiety or our stress, instead of doing what it takes to actually heal the imbalances in our systems that are continuously creating depression and anxiety and stress, we will stay paying industry that is paying the governments through the lobbyists, that is paying off all of the candidates for many countries around the world, right? Because they are essentially like puppeteering this whole scenario where for them to stay in power and to have more money, they need the mass consciousness of the collective to be in fear, to be in a trauma response, so that we're in that perpetration of victimhood that is looking for a rescuer. In this big pharma and government and all these systems rush in to be that rescuer that just actually puts a band-aid over the deeper issues that are happening. And if the pharmaceuticals were doing what they were supposed to be doing, which is healing depression, we wouldn't have such an upsurge of suicide right now from depression. If they were doing what they're said to be doing, healing the body, we wouldn't have an upsurge of stress being the #1 cause of death. And it's crazy to think that in this normalization of fear, a lot of these quote unquote medicines have the very side effect. For example, there are depression medications that the side effect is suicidal thoughts. It's like, why would we ever think it okay to give someone who has a mental health challenge of depression, which is known to lead to suicidal thinking, a drug that is going to increase their suicidal thoughts? It's because we have normalized fear. We have normalized this world of disease. We have normalized a world of scarcity and lack and war and violence. All of the fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic overdrive of our nervous system that has created all of this dysfunctions of our mind, our body, and spirit. And someone here on Instagram, Shadley, is sharing, I have stress and depression after I had an operation. And this is something that is very common. When we cut open our body, we are doing something to our body that is not natural. And the way that that impacts someone's minds and their biology is not being talked about. And then add on top of that pain medications and things, and we see this cycle of people just falling down the drain of a life of pain and suffering. These conversations are not comfortable to have, right? It's not glamorous and sexy and desirable to talk about the dangers of our normalization of fear. Even the surge of some of the quote unquote spiritual movements right now are normalizing fear, are normalizing violence, are normalizing the abuse of our imbalanced and dysfunctional nervous system. In order for us to actually rip the band-aid off and to do what we all say we're here to do, which is to awaken a world of love. We cannot awaken a world of love without talking about and going into the dangers of the world that we have created, which is a world where the majority of people are living on antidepressants, on some type of pharmaceutical just so they can get by, where the majority of the world doesn't know how they're going to afford to pay for food or pay for their home or do things for their children. They don't know where their next paycheck or where their next meal is going to come from. This is because we have normalized fear, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's normal for us all to be broken. That kind of thinking keeps it okay to stay in scarcity. It keeps it okay to stay on medications that are only actually creating more of the very thing that you went to seek out help for to begin with. If we are going to awaken this world of love, we must actually go in and to look at this world that we have all collectively co-created. And I take full responsibility for my role in the creation of this world. I take full responsibility for the mental diseases that I have experienced, the physical diseases that I have experienced that led me to a majority of this life experiencing depression and almost committing suicide and being on that path of deep and profound wounds and trauma that I was not willing to look at for a very long time. And I take responsibility for my life now to look at those things and to actually have gone in to learn how to heal them so that I was no longer self-medicating as a 18-year long use of cannabis and alcohol to self-medicate the deep and profound pain that I was in of being alive. And in and through sobriety, healing has taken place because I was no longer running from the very wounds that I'm here to heal and to revere and to have these conversations about. Because we cannot awaken a world of love if we keep playing in the same dimension of normalizing our fears. We cannot awaken love if we're not willing to look at some of the really deep disturbances that are happening on the planet right now, where it is normal for, or it is just like put over here for children to be put in cages right now, to children to not have food, for children to be human trafficked and sexually abused. Like that has become normalized, and because the fear has become normalized, our sympathetic response is to actually flee away and just not pay attention to that. You know how much proof there is around certain organizations like the Catholic Church having years and years and years been abusing children, and yet they still hold the same power in people's lives that they've held since their inception. Because of our normalization of fear that has said, hey, it's normal to be living in sympathetic dominance. And what that response is going to be is some of us are going to get angry at that and we're going to leave the church. Others are going to freeze and just, this is something I don't want to look at, so I'm going to push it away, and we're going to run from it, and we're going to just stay in that abusive pattern because we don't want to look at it, right? These are all results of the normalization of fear and how it's created it's so dangerous. We have to start looking at the ways that we are playing into this and the ways that we are just taking things to mask the symptoms without going deeper internally to actually heal the causes. Because these are the fears and the unhealed traumas that are going to keep us backpedaling into this very corrupted world where we are blocked from our infinite capacity, where we are living in more disease of the mind, the body, and the spirit than as long as we can remember conceivably in this time. So I just want to say that, be really, truly, deeply aware of how you have played into the desensitization and the normalization of fear, where it is normal to read about a school shooting, or normal to read about a war, or normal to see commercials on the television screen that say they're going to heal depression and then have a side effect of suicide. And it hurts my heart. And it lights a passion, a fire in my soul to speak about it, because we will keep just brushing it away from our nervous system imbalances if we don't actually do something to restore balance to our collective nervous system, so that we are no longer in this fight, flight, or freeze mode, unable to create change because we're staying in this loop of feeding this fear-oriented system, where it's no longer a big deal to see homeless people on the streets, or to see children suffering or to see war. We can't keep normalizing the fear paradigm because we will never get out and see the light of the love paradigm that we all know in our hearts we're here to be a part of. That isn't going to just spontaneously happen. It happens through all of us, one by one, working to heal our internal imbalances of our nervous system, of our neurology, of our mind, of our emotions that have normalized this fear paradigm, that have fed into it through fighting it or running from it or freezing up and just numbing all of the symptoms. This is your invitation to look in the mirror and to really evaluate the energy that you want to be contributing to this world and to this time. And then once you're clear on what that energy is, to really deeply look at yourself and to look at the environment around you, to look at the stories that you're playing out, and to be very honest with yourself if those stories are actually in an integrity with the energy that you want to be sharing with the world. And no, it's not an easy process. Yes, it will be painful to be this radically honest with yourself. I know because I've been there. And it's not easy to say, this is what I want to be sending out. And yet these are all the stories that I am playing into that are actually not really sending that energy out. They're actually feeding very opposite thing that I want to be sending out, that I want my life to be the embodiment of. The last thing that I'm going to share, as I'm gone over our time for today's live, is the last several years, since 2012 until really 2022, I've been in a integration phase of waking up conceptually and spiritually to the idea of a world of love. We've been catching the information of what that means. The next cycle that we're moving into, that we're now starting to prepare ourselves for as we come into the last 2 years of this 10-year cycle, is we start to move into the energy of actually looking at ourselves and taking that information that we have received and that we have learned and that we have awakened from within ourselves, and we start to embody it. And the embodiment of it is the process of healing all of the trauma, all of the fears, all of the dysfunctions in our systems and in our beliefs and in our what we're choosing to send our energy into, and in the reality that we're accepting. If we continue to accept poverty, homelessness, child sexual abuse, war, there not being enough food for everyone on the planet, there not being enough water for everyone on the planet, that this planet is just being destroyed, that we're never going to see the end of la da 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 da. If we continue to accept that, we will never change it. We have to wake up to our role and see how we're feeding into it, because what is internally is externally, what is externally is internally. And you can go back to day 12 of this 21-day challenge to watch the video all about that. With that being said, thank you so much for those of you who watched this video, who are here with me for the 21 days of fear. I encourage you, if you're resonating with these videos, to host a watch party of them on your Facebook wall, to share them on your Instagram or on your YouTube page, or to your community, to tag people who you feel like would really be supported by these messages, so that we can be proactively stepping into a world beyond fear through having these conversations that reveal the parts of us that have been hiding and normalizing fear to begin with. I'm Homna, everyone, and I appreciate you all so much. I will see you tomorrow for day 16. Wherever you're at in the world, I hope that you have a beautiful day or evening. Much love to you all. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.